The offseason's all but over at this point, thankfully, and being less than a month away from spring training, that means we're in a good spot to go ahead and take a look at every team's offseason, the moves that they made, and whether they got better, got worse, or in relatively the same position. We've already talked about the NL East, so today we're going to go ahead and talk about the AL East. This is Smarter Baseball, where we deep dive into everything going on throughout Major League Baseball. If you enjoy the content and want to support the channel, like a lot of you have been doing recently, thank you so much for joining the channel, for supporting. I really appreciate it. Show your support, like the video, subscribe to the page, turn on notifications, go ahead and follow on social media. Links are down in the description. Let's go ahead and talk about the AL East. So we're going division by division, breaking down every team's offseason, and we're really mainly looking at what I'll call the significant moves. If a guy played at least 30, 40 games for his team and was relatively a part of the roster, we'll go ahead and bring them into this, talk about them, and if they're projected by Fangraphs roster resource to make the 26-man roster, then we'll go ahead and talk about the guys that got brought in. But this would be longer than Titanic if we sat here and talked about every single roster move and everything that got made. So nobody wants me to talk that long. So we're going to keep it relatively short and sweet, as short as I can keep it on this channel when I talk forever like I'm doing right now. So we're just going to break down every team's offseason. And instead of giving them some kind of a letter grade, a A-, F+, C sideways, whatever, we're just going to go ahead and say, did they get better? Did they get worse? Or are they relatively the same? So enough of that. Let's go ahead. And first, we're talking about Baltimore. You've got second baseman Rougned Odor leaving 135 games, 632 OPS and an 80 WRC+, .4 FWAR. Really, this guy was just kind of a stand-in for you at second. He was somebody that was just kind of filling the spot for you. You're not super worried about him leaving, and really none of these guys you are all that worried about leaving if you're the Orioles here. Jordan Lyles gave you 32 starts, 179 innings pitched, but a 4.42 ERA, 4.40 FIP, 1.4 FWAR. He's basically a back-end rotation guy on like a competing type of team. Probably that like fourth, more like your fifth starter, right? Robinson Chirinos, backup catcher, 67 games, 552 OPS and a 61 WRC+. You're more than fine with his negative 1.6 FWAR walking out of this building. You would take about anything else to replace him other than that. And you got Tyler Nevin coming off the bench there, 58 games, 67 WRC+, also negative FWAR. Like I said, not really anything here for the Orioles that you're super worried about losing. So who do they bring in? You got second baseman Adam Frazier, 156 games, the 612 OPS and the 81 WRC+. Like last year in Seattle, as a Mariners fan and watching a lot of him, was a down year for him. He's a guy that's very just a slap type hitter, put the ball in play, and when BABIP doesn't work very much for him or in his favor, that's when you see him struggle, and that was the case last year. He just could not find a hole to save his life. But wow, he couldn't find a spot to get a base hit to save his life there. So hopefully that bounces back for him, and you get at least more of this like solid everyday player that he probably is, rather than maybe some of this like peak, like borderline all-star Frazier that we've seen in the past. You bring in James McCann for that backup catcher role, 61 games last year, 538 OPS, 59 WRC+, not a whole lot offensively, but at least was positive in FWAR, so there's at least something there defensively as like a backup. Kyle Gibson comes into the rotation, 31 starts, 167 and 2/3 innings, 5.05 ERA, 4.28 FIP, a 1.8 FWAR. Basically would be right in the same spot as Jordan Lyles. Goes right in towards the back of a rotation. And then you add Michael Givens and Andrew Politti? I think Politi going into this bullpen. Givens is a pretty solid guy there, 61 and a 1/3 innings, 3.38 ERA, 3.96 FIP. Politi, if I'm even getting that right, I will butcher names throughout this. You mark my words on that. He's a Rule 5 pick. He's at least going to get a shot to make this bullpen, but I mean, that's yet to be seen. So for the Orioles here, you bring in Frazier for Odor, hopefully trying to get a little bit more out of that second base position, kind of turn that at least into like a solid everyday kind of player. McCann comes in for Chirinos, not a huge upgrade, but I mean, that really almost anything would be better than what Chirinos gave you last year. Gibson basically comes in for Lyles. You add the couple relievers, you lose a bench, Pete. Like, the Orioles really ended up kind of staying the same, but I think they were kind of a team that you could have maybe brought in a superstar, but maybe it ends up being a year early. So like, and you don't want to, well, now would be the time to kind of overpay for somebody. I don't know. They could have brought in a superstar this year, but I don't blame them for not. I think you give all these young guys a little bit more playing time, a little bit more experience, especially as we get to some of the other teams in this division that they'd be competing with. I think they're better poised next year, maybe for like a legit playoff run. Now let's go to Boston. The big one here, obviously, you lose shortstop Xander Bogaerts. 150 games, 833 OPS with a 134 WRC plus, 6.1 FWAR, puts him well above the 5 for all-star level. Like, he's a homegrown guy, all that. Like, Boston has just had some rough years over the last couple of years watching this kind of stuff happen, and this is just another thing in this. Out of the rotation, you lose a good handful of guys here. Rich Hill, aka Dick Mountain, Michael Waka, Nathan Eovaldi. I mean, all of these guys were pretty, like, solid middle of the rotation type of guys, like good depth to have in a rotation. Hill had a 4.27 ERA, 3.92 FIP. Waka a 3.32 ERA, 4.14 FIP. Eovaldi 3.87 ERA, 4.30 FIP. All of them giving you at least 100 innings, but you know, Hill made the most starts at 26, so all of them were kind of dealing with some injuries throughout the year. Like, it's at least depth, quality depth in the rotation that if you're looking to compete, I mean, you can't let 3 guys like this leave. Like, maybe 1, possibly 2, but to let 3 guys leave, that's kind of big here. JD Martinez also on his way out of town. 139 games, 789 OPS, 119 WRC plus. He's not quite the same guy that we're used to seeing. Age seems to be catching up here a little bit. If you're not gonna, or you're worried about overpaying to keep him, you're fine with letting Martinez walk at this point, I think. Tommy Pham also 53 games after coming over, was pretty much giving you kind of bench role type of production. Same as Eric Hosmer, only 14 games. And God, I don't know what it is about Boston helping out the Padres there apparently, but they're doing them a real solid over the last 6 months or so. Hosmer gets DFA'd, you send him out. You got Chang and Cordero off the bench leaving. Danish? I don't know, but it's making me crave sweets here. Him and Strom leaving. Strom's the big one there. 3.83 ERA, 3.72 FIP. That's a solid reliever to have on, like, head out of town. So basically, I mean, Boston got worse. Like, well, I should probably get to players that they added first before I even get to that, but they got worse. You bring in Masataka Yoshida. He comes over from Japan. Kind of talked about in the last video with Senga. These guys from Japan are a little bit of a wild card, just in the fact that, like, you can get a relative idea of the player that they're going to be, but until you actually see them against other major leaguers, you're not fully certain. So we'll see how he ends up doing in the outfield there. Justin Turner comes in to replace DH. 128 games last year, 788 OPS, 123 WRC plus. Like, he could fill that kind of leadership role for you. He's been on these championship teams. You also bring in catcher Jorge Alfaro, probably be more of a backup, 82 games, 667 OPS, 90 WRC plus. Now you bring in Corey Kluber to fill one of these spots in the rotation, and whatever he's still got left in the tank at this point. Gave the Rays 31 starts, 164 innings last year, 4.34 ERA, 3.57 FIP. Like, again, you're just gonna have to kind of see what's left from him at this point. Now they address the bullpen though. You got Jansen, Martin, Rodriguez. Jansen being the big one here, closing for the Braves this last season. 64 innings, 3.38 ERA, 3.21 FIP. I mean, a solid bullpen piece for sure, as well as Martin here, who gave you 56 innings, 3.05 ERA, 2.18 FIP. Like, these are good moves to add to this bullpen for sure. But I mean, overall here for Boston, I mean, you lose Bogarts. Like, yeah, you bring in Turner to replace JD Martinez. You bring in Kluber to try to replace three basically the same relative level of pitcher. You bring in Yoshida, who's kind of a wild card coming over from Japan. Like, yeah, you upgraded the bullpen, but I mean, you just lose so much more here than you ended up adding if you're Boston. Like, they got worse, and I really hate seeing Boston keep doing this kind of stuff, but whatever. Now, to their biggest rival now, the New York Yankees. You got Andrew Benintendi on his way out of town. You make the trade for him. He goes 33 games for you, a 111 WRC plus, but then ends up getting hurt. You have Matt Carpenter, who goes off in 47 games, a 1.139 OPS and 217 WRC plus in that time. 47 games is all it took for him to give you at least starter quality, like, value. And then he gets hurt too. Both of those guys, I mean, potential kind of everyday players that you have leaving here that you got to replace. Jameson Taillon comes out of this rotation, 32 starts, 177 and a third innings, 3.91 ERA, 3.94 FIP. Just a solid middle of the rotation guy there. And then you've got Tim LeCastro, Marwin Gonzalez off of the bench. Neither one of them, I mean, real things that you're worried about losing. You know, LeCastro's a defensive base running kind of guy. Gonzalez just a utility, like, and really was not hitting well at all. Out of the bullpen, Chapman, Castro, Britton, Green, and Lukey all gone. And I mean, the main ones there, you lose Green, 15 innings only, but a 3 ERA, 2.85 FIP. Lukey, an even bigger one, 57 and a third innings, 2.67 ERA, 3.03 FIP. Britton only went 2/3 of an innings for you, but Britton has been a very solid reliever at points in his career, so potentially a pretty big loss there as well. And to address all of this, the Yankees bring in Carlos Rodon, a second ace to pair with Garrett Cole, 31 starts, 178 innings, 2.88 ERA, 2.25 FIP, 6.2 FWAR, again, well above all-star level in WAR. And then you bring in, I'm just going to call him Tommy. I'm not even going to try on that last name there. 12.2 innings pitched, 2.84 ERA, but a 4.38 FIP. So again, maybe kind of a wild card there to see exactly what you end up getting out of him. Like, really, the Yankees have all of this leave town, and all they do is add Carlos Rodon. Like, for this team, that's a definite upgrade, right? Anytime you can add an ace kind of a pitcher to your rotation, that's for sure an upgrade, especially, you know, taking him over Taillon, middle of the rotation guy. But you lose all this in the bullpen. You have potentially Carpenter and Benintendi, full-time players, leave. You're going to have to really start leaning on a lot of these younger guys a little bit more, especially Oswaldo Cabrera's kind of penciled in right now to basically replace Benintendi in the outfield there, let alone what they've got going on with shortstop and all that. Like, I don't know. They got better, but like I feel like they could have done more here, and I don't know. I don't feel great about it, but let's just say they got better. Next, this brings us to the Tampa Bay Rays, another team that I'm sure I'm not going to feel great about what they did, but they're going to prove me wrong. They have Ryan Yarbrough leave, Corey Kluber out of this rotation, who we already just talked about Kluber. But Yarbrough also 20 starts, 80 innings, 4.5 ERA, 4.77 FIP. More bottom of that rotation. Probably not super worried about him leaving. The Rays always seem to find arms that can fill these spots. They trade out Ji-Man Choi, 113 games, 729 OPS, 116 WRC plus. Was a bit of a down year for him, so take that as you will. They let Kevin Kiermaier go. Real good defense out there in center field. And then you have Zunino and Peralta, kind of these more bench guys for you leaving. You also have 4 of your bullpen arms, which again, it's the Rays. They're going to find guys to come in and fill these spots somehow. But Fire Eisen, I feel like I'm getting that right, which means I'm getting it absolutely wrong. 24 1/3 innings, a 0 ERA with a 1.67 FIP. Brooks Raley, 53 2/3 innings, 2.68 ERA, 2.74 FIP. I mean, those are 2 pretty solid guys that you're probably going to have to look at filling those spots. And once again, I mean, the Rays are probably just going to do it because they can do it. They're real big signing. They go and get Zach Eflin because that's like the most Rays thing I've ever heard of. 20 games, 75 2/3 innings, kind of bouncing back between bullpen and rotation. 4.04 ERA, 3.56 FIP, 1.4 FWAR. So you figure if you get a full season in the rotation out of him, at least like middle of the rotation kind of value there. They go out and they purchase Kevin Kelly for the bullpen. And basically they do what the Rays do of take a lot of these older guys that are starting to have to get paid a little bit, getting later into arbitration, and they turn them into a shit ton of prospects. So I'm sure they're going to find value in there. They're going to make me feel absolutely stupid about this. But on paper, it looks like they're losing way more here than they're bringing in. You've got Yarbrough and Kluber leaving the rotation, but you bring in Eflin, Kiermaier and Choi, who are both, starter-ish type players on the way out. Peralta and Zunino off the bench. You lose all of these bullpen arms. You bring in one guy. They reload and get younger and just do what they do every season. And on paper, you would think that they're going to get worse and they'll probably win the AL East this next year somehow out of nowhere. So go ahead and chalk that up. I say they got worse, but they probably got better. Last, this brings us to Toronto. And I don't know what it is about you Toronto fans, man, but you guys hate me. So let's just get right into this, don't we? They send out Teoscar Hernandez, 131 games, 807 OPS, 129 WRC plus, 2.4 FWAR. Bat first, very solid, everyday player in the outfield there for you. Lourdes Gurriel also traded out, 121 games, 743 OPS, 114 WRC plus. Bit of a down year offensively for him. He's even more bat first than Hernandez. Really no defense. Covered him and Moreno here in a video on the trade if you want to go check that out. But Moreno, one of the top catching prospects in baseball. 25 games, 733 OPS, 113 WRC plus. I mean, they had the room to do it. And we'll get into this more in a second, but I mean, that is value that you're losing there. You've got Tapia, Zimmer, and Jackie Bradley Jr., all backup outfielders kind of off of the bench here. Not anything you're super worried about, but also after already giving up 2 outfielders, I mean, that's a lot to lose in the outfield there. You also get Ross Stripling leaving for the middle of this rotation. 32 games last year, 134 1/3 innings, 3.01 ERA, 3.11 FIP, The 3.1 F-WAR, I mean, this is, he's a definite, very solid third guy in this rotation. Or in any rotation, really. And then you bring in have David Phelps leave. I don't know why I keep bouncing back thinking that these guys were coming in. David Phelps leaves, 63 and 2/3 innings, 2.83 ERA, and a 3.16 FIP. That's a very solid reliever heading out of town there. Now for who the Blue Jays bring in, the big piece here is obviously in the trade, you getting Dalton Varsho. 151 games, 745 OPS, and a 106 WRC+. And I think there's untapped potential offensive upside here still. He was pretty highly regarded as a prospect, but with his 4.6 F-WAR, I mean, just below all-star level, what this guy really brings to the table and the reason that Toronto makes this move, they needed defense in the outfield, and Varsho brings that a lot, along with getting Kevin Kiermaier, platinum glove winner out in center field. You definitely add defense to this outfield with the two of these guys. Brandon Belt also comes in for the bench, kind of that lefty spot hitter, DH, first base backup. I mean, not expecting old Brandon Belt at this point from him. You also get Chris Bassett for the middle of this rotation. I mean, right about where he fits. 30 starts, 181 and 2/3 innings, 3.42 ERA, 3.66 FIP. Like you said, he plugs right into the middle of this rotation. And Eric Swanson comes over in the trade with Seattle. I watched this guy a ton as a Mariners fan. I don't know why we didn't use him more and in higher level, leverage situations than we did. This guy's insanely good, and Toronto fans, you're really going to enjoy having him at the back of your bullpen. 53 and 2/3 innings, a 1.68 ERA, 1.85 FIP, and he's done this the last 2-3 seasons. So very, very solid reliever. So now let's go ahead and get into this where I'm really probably going to piss you guys off, but we'll talk about overall for this offseason for the Blue Jays. First, let's talk about the outfield. You bring in Varsho and Kiermaier, which add a ton of defense in a spot that they really needed it. That's definitely an add for the Blue Jays here. Varsho also, like we said, has that potential offensive upside. I mean, still a pretty young guy. Hit, 28 home runs this last year? I don't have that offhand, whatever. 26, I think, something around there. He's got this offensive upside still, so potentially you're not losing then a lot of this offense that you're giving up by having Hernandez and Gurriel leaving. I mean, both of those guys, 129 WRC+, 114 WRC+. And a lot of Blue Jays fans have said that those are down years for both of these guys. So you're potentially giving up quite a bit of offense out of the outfield here. And I mean, I guess it is at a spot where you can say, we're willing to give up the offense to get the defense. And like you said, there's maybe even some offense still coming here from Varsho. You can swap out Bassett for Stripling. They were both relatively the same pitcher. They're going to fill the same kind of role in the middle of that rotation. About the same for Swanson and Phelps. I would say Swanson is a little bit better. I'd say that was kind of an upgrade for you. Now, where we get into this and where I know I'm going to probably start ruffling some feathers here is with trading away Moreno for what you got back. He is one of the top catching prospects, and I get it was a loaded position. It was definitely, I'm not faulting Toronto for trading away Moreno in this case. What I will give them a little fault for is I think they could have gotten more than they did. To trade away an everyday player, or at least a solid kind of offensive fill-in DH type guy in Gurriel, and to trade away one of the top catching prospects to get back Varsho, I think you could have gotten more for Varsho, or at least, packaged Moreno in maybe a different deal. But I think you could have gotten more for trading away, such a potentially very valuable trade asset there. That's just kind of my opinion on it. It really just clean out and reset this outfield. You know, Belt's not going to give you a whole lot. All in all, I'd say this team stays relatively the same. Maybe they're a little bit better, but I think they could have gotten much better than they did with this. I'm sure Toronto fans, you're going to let me know about my take in here. If you're a fan of any of these teams, go ahead, comment down below. Let me know what you think about these. You guys know your teams better than I do. I'm a Mariners fan. Just like they say on Talkin' Baseball and all that, if you're a fan of your team and you watch them consistently, you know these guys better than I do. I'm looking at what all the numbers and all this stuff can tell me. So you guys comment down below. Let me know what did I get right? What am I missing here? Let's open up a discussion about this. I enjoy talking baseball. I enjoy actually, sharing opinions and all of this stuff. Not just calling everybody stupid because we have differing baseball opinions. So let's open up discussions about this. Let's have a good time, talk some baseball. Comment down below about your teams in this division. Thank you for watching if you got to this point. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you want to be a part of the channel, help us grow, be a part of what we're building here. Like the video, subscribe to the page, turn on notifications. Go ahead, join. A lot of you guys have been joining recently. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. I was shooting for 500 subscribers like a week ago. Let's try to get over 1,000 now. Let's see how far we can get this thing to go. I hope you guys enjoyed again. We'll go through every single division. We've hit the NL East. Now we've hit the AL East. We'll go ahead and hit the NL Central next because I pissed off Cardinals fans in a video a couple ones ago. So let's go ahead and talk about the Cardinals next now. Every division, every team, we're going to talk about it, break it down, and so much more on this channel. So make sure you stay tuned. Thank you again for watching. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one.